Dear students, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I am Manzur Ahmad Ganai, lecturer history. Our today's topic or question for 12th class students of history subject is discuss whether the term Royal Center is an appropriate description of the part of the city for which it is used. Let me explain the question. Dear students, we understand that the Hampi temple town in Vijayanagra was one of the most important towns there, the most important towns of the Vijayanagra Empire, and an important part of the city, an important part of the Hampi in Vijayanagra was known as Royal Center. And the question is that, is it right to call that particular area of Hampi as Royal Center, or is it right to use the name Royal Center for a particular area of Hampi in Vijayanagra, or does the name Royal Center suit with the area of the city for which the name Royal Center has been used? And now the question is that, how can we justify that the name Royal Center, which has been used for a particular area of the city, is right to call that area with the very name, that's Royal Center? Let's answer this question. The Royal Center was located in the southwestern part of the city, and while looking at the features of the Royal Center of that particular area, which is known as Royal Center, while looking at the features of this area, we understand that it is perhaps appropriate to call this area with the very name, that is Royal Center. Why? Let's try to understand why we say that it is appropriate to call that particular area of Hampi as Royal Center for which the name has been used. So the reasons are: number one, in the Royal Center, as the name suggests, was the area where Vijayanagra kings and their family members and private householders lived and conducted daily business and administration. So the very first feature of Royal Center makes us understand that the name Royal Center is very appropriate for that area of the city, because in the Royal Center there were the king's palace, there was the king who lived there, and the king's family as well used to live in the Royal Center. Number one. Number two, in the Royal Center there were about 60 temples. One of the most important temples were in the Royal Center. Number three, it is believed that the goddess and goddesses placed in these temples were so important that the kings used to worship these goddess and goddesses in these temples, and by worshipping these goddess and goddesses in these temples, the kings thought to rise their status in the eyes of the people by worshipping the gods and goddesses of temples in the Royal Center. So such was the importance of the temples in the Royal Center that the worship of gods and goddesses in these temples exalted the status of kings in the society and legitimized their rule. So the kings worshipped the gods and goddesses in the temples in the Royal Center to legitimize and to recognize their rule in the eyes of the people, in the eyes of the Hindu subjects. Number three, it is believed that, next we can say, about 30 building complexes, which were more perhaps the palaces of kings and their families, were located in the Royal Center. So 30 building complexes, which are most important, perhaps, okay, most probably, the palaces of kings and the royal families have been identified in the royal center. So the kings, so the palaces found in royal center once again suggest that the name used for the very place is very much appropriate. Next, one of the distinctive features of the royal center was the king's palace. King's palace was the largest of the structures found here, though it has not yet yielded definite evidence of being a royal residence. But it's most often believed that the king's palace, which is the most impressive structure here, was located within the royal center. It was in the royal center that two massive platforms, namely Mahanami Dibba and Audience Hall, were also located here. Another important building in the royal center, monument in the royal center, is the Lotus Mahal. Historians also differ on the use of Lotus Mahal, but the Lotus Mahal was a very impressive structure, in the royal center. Hazara Rama Temple, constructed by Krishnadeva Raya in 1520, was the most attractive structure in the royal center. It was perhaps used by kings and his family for the purpose of worshipping. So the features that we have mentioned of the royal center, this completely suggests that the name royal center used for that part of the city was much appropriate and much suited to this area. Thank you.